Hi guys, I'm Mahana and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my top tips for landing a job in investment banking without studying a finance degree. If that sounds good to you, then keep on watching. For those of you that are new to my channel and don't know much about me or my background, I studied physics at university and landed a banking job upon graduation. Banking is really not for everyone, and so if you're watching this video, you need to make the decision on your own whether banking is something that you want to do or if you don't. But if you have decided that that's what you want, then this video is for you. And in this, I'll be sharing my top actionable tips and things that you can actually do that will help you land the job of your dreams. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. Let's go all the way back to GCSEs when you're 16 years old. Now, I actually don't have GCSEs. I moved internationally when I was 14 years old. I left the UK and I lived in India for 2 years, in which I was at an American school and I did the American curriculum. And then for my last 2 years of school, I moved to Singapore and did the IB. In my opinion, GCSE grades don't really influence your chances of landing a banking job. There is certainly something to be said for those who have a proven track record of continuously achieving very high grades throughout school. But on its own, I wouldn't be too fixated if you feel like you don't have good GCSEs, as I've never once been asked to show my GCSEs for any job that I've applied to, and if they did ask me, I wouldn't have them anyway because of the curriculum that I was doing at the time. Where things do start to matter is your last 2 years of school. So for me, that was doing the IB in Singapore, and for those of you in the UK, you'll probably be doing A-levels. This is where grades do matter, and they come to play in a couple of ways. Your grades really do determine the university that you end up at, especially in the UK. Whilst investment banks do tend to hire across all Russell Group universities, they do have preferences for some universities over others. It goes without saying that Oxbridge is desirable, so if you're at Oxford or Cambridge, that does improve your chances. And also if you're at universities like LSE, Imperial, UCL, Warwick, Edinburgh, St Andrews, these are all also very, very good universities and will help increase your chances of landing a job in banking. And that's absolutely not to say that you can't get into banking if you're from another university. The list certainly doesn't end at the universities I've mentioned, but without sugarcoating it, if I look at the statistics and the friends that I can recall who have ended up in banking jobs, these are the most common universities that they do come from. I also just want to say that I am a firm believer that a top university brand name doesn't always correlate to the best candidate for the job, and especially now working in a startup, I realize that more than ever. But in banking, unfortunately, it is a factor that does come to play, so you will increase your chances quite significantly if you are at least aiming for a Russell Group uni, and even better if you're aiming for one of the unis that I mentioned. Before we get into talking about unis, again on the topic of IB, A-levels, university choices, another thing that I'd really recommend you start doing at school is 1, gaining work experience, and 2, taking part in lots of extracurriculars. Something that I was told by a member of my team in the bank that I was going to work at is that they can see who has consistently gone above and beyond. And it's that type of personality that they look for in banking. People who've always gone above and beyond, done things that weren't expected of them, and shown achievement consistently in a wide range of areas beyond just academics. For me, when I started high school at my state comprehensive school in the UK when I was 11, I was doing extracurriculars from year 7 itself. In year 7, I actually did the Times Spelling Bee. Sadly, that skill has only gotten worse with years, so slightly ashamed to say, but I was a better speller aged 11 than I am now, 21. But the point being that I was very involved in things that weren't purely class related. I would also do maths challenges, I was part of the STEM club, I used to play netball, and all these things cascaded. And as I got older, this was just a habit for me, that it was normal to do more than just study. Age 14, when I left the UK, I was very fortunate that the schools I attended had a load of extracurricular opportunities, and I made sure to take advantage of them because they really do make a difference to your own personal development, but they also help you on your CV. And a little tip there, an extracurricular that banks like to see in particular is around leadership. So it's great to be involved in clubs and societies, but if you've shown some sort of acumen of stepping up, taking initiative, and managing people, these are skills that are so valuable in a banking job. So if you can show that you started nurturing them from a really young age, it'll help your case when it comes to an application. So it is important that you work hard for your A-levels or your IB exams if you do want to get into banking. I do want to remind you, it's not the end of the world if you don't make your grades and get into your number one choice university. But if you do want to do everything you can to increase your chances, having good grades and going to your top choice university will help you. So, on to university degree choice. The great thing about investment banking, and in the UK in particular, is that you can study pretty much whatever you want to at university, and that doesn't close doors to entering investment banking when you graduate. My advice here is to study something that you're passionate about and something that you feel you will achieve a 2-1 or above in grade-wise. Having a physics degree, I'm a little bit biased, and I talk about this more in the Can You Build a Startup Without Knowing How to Code video, but I think physics, and generally degrees where you do a little bit of maths, helps you a lot when it comes to any job. With banking applications, oftentimes you're asked to do a numerical reasoning test or a logic test, and if you've studied a subject in which you're constantly expected to problem solve and apply mathematics to, these tests aren't as much of a panic as if you are, let's say, a history student and you haven't done maths since you were 16 and finished your GCSEs. It's not to say that you won't be able to do the maths, because in all honesty, the maths level expected for a graduate banker is pretty low in the grand scheme of things, so you can absolutely do it if you've studied a humanities subject and not done maths at A-level. But it definitely alleviates some of the stress and the pressure when it comes to preparing for these interviews and applications, because you're so confident with your maths that it's not something you really need to prepare for. However, if you're pushing yourself to study maths or physics at university and you don't believe you can get a 2-1, you're probably better off studying a subject that you're more passionate about and that you enjoy more and scoring more highly in. Because unfortunately, again, grades do matter when it comes to applying for banking jobs. Typically, you have to be on a 2-1 or above to apply. In my honest opinion, it doesn't actually matter if you're on a first or an exceptional first or just a 2-1. As long as you're above that threshold, you'll be fine. And for reference, I have been on a 2-1 the entirety of my degree, and I'm graduating with a 2-1. Of course, I would have loved to have got a first, but again, I talk about this in another video. Physics wasn't really for me, and it was a very, very challenging degree. For me, even getting a 2-1 was a lot of work, and had I not got a 2-1, which was not completely out of the question, it would have prohibited me from applying to these jobs. I was fortunate that I just about did stay on a 2-1 and was able to apply for all the jobs that I wanted to. But if your degree is so hard that you can't get a 2-1, that is a factor you should think about if you already know that you want to go into banking. So degree choice doesn't have the biggest impact when it comes to whether it'll help you or hinder you from getting into banking. But what can make a big difference is getting internships on your CV. And for that, you need to start early. I started in my first year, and my friends at uni had started in school. They'd gone on insight programs and workshops at these investment banks and had already made themselves known to the recruiting departments, which again helps a lot when it comes to future and later recruiting. If you're still at school in sixth form, it may be worth looking into some of the school schemes they have. And if you're in your first year of university, you're certainly not too young, as almost all investment banks offer spring weeks, which are purposely designed for first year students. There are pretty much no financial knowledge expectations for these spring weeks, which is why it's so important that you have a good track record from school and you have things that make your CV stand out, as that's really how they accept first years. If you think about it, the spring weeks happen in roughly April of your first year, and the applications for them happen in November, December of your first year. So for me, I'd literally been at university for 2 months and I was already applying to these internships. So you're not expected to have already learnt very much from university. Make sure that from school you already have things that you can talk about and factors that differentiate you from other candidates. And again, just to caveat this, you don't need a spring week to get a summer internship or a job, but it helps. And this video is about making it as easy for you as possible. The fact is that the younger you start, the less competition you'll have. And it's really a snowball effect that once you have one big name on your CV, it becomes easier to get more. So make sure that you get in there early and are very proactive from the beginning. So then throughout university, it's super important that you maintain a strong track record of high grades and extracurriculars, as again, This is what makes you stand out and shows that you go above and beyond the average student, which is all about what banks are looking for. Get involved with societies, step up to leadership positions, and run events. There are so many opportunities at universities for these kinds of experiences, so make sure that you take advantage of them. Most of the time, they're a lot of fun as well, and they honestly do help you with your CV. The other thing you should think about while you're at university is starting to build up knowledge about the industry. The onus is on you to understand what the job actually entails. What I would start with is Googling, looking things up online, and there are amazing resources on the internet. My absolute favorite is Wall Street Oasis. There is so much on there, and that will really get you 90% of the way. There's also mergers and acquisitions, and there's loads of videos on YouTube talking about how banks are structured and what the different roles are. If you want me to also film a YouTube video explaining this, comment down below and that's something I'm more than happy to do. It's still super important that you talk to people who work in the industry. And in general, networking is a powerful skill to have. You don't need to be born into a great network or have loads of family friends in banking. Make yourself a LinkedIn profile and reach out to people. For reference, I made my LinkedIn profile in my first year, and I just used to message people and ask for coffee chats. With coffee chats, it's important that you do a bit of research beforehand. You have to show that you have the interest and you've already spent some time trying to understand the various functions and a bit more about the industry. But there are some questions that you can only really get the answer to from speaking to someone one-on-one and asking them specific questions. And this is a great way to develop the skill of taking initiative and networking, as this is something you need in banking. You need to be able to just reach out to a person that you haven't spoken to before and hold a conversation. My advice here is that you make a LinkedIn profile, you fill it with all your details, your school, your university, any experience that you've had, and you message people, introduce yourself clearly, explain why you're reaching out. It might be to learn about their specific team or their division, and have 1 or 2 specific questions ready. When I used to reach out to people, I'd normally have a quick look at their profile, look to where they studied or how long they'd worked at their given bank, and I'd come up with some curated questions for them, and I'd put 1 or 2 in the intro message, just to let them know that, I have actually put time into this and I would really like to talk to them. You have to be prepared that some people will ignore your message or say no, but again, you need to build up that skill in life. If you're too scared to try things, then you're certainly not going to get things done. So failure is okay, it is normal, don't take it personally. That said, when people now reach out to me asking for my tips and advice, or if they have an interview coming up with a bank that I've worked at, I always try to respond and make the time for that person, as I had some amazing people who did the same for me when I was on the other side of the coin. So, you've gone to university, you're studying your degree, you're doing all these extracurriculars, and you're going on coffee chats with people. You're almost there. The next thing I want to talk about is applications to the banks and how to strategize around them. The 2 most important things I want to emphasize here are 1, be organized, and 2, be early. On the first point, you should expect to apply to a lot of internships, and I'll talk more about this later, but it is difficult to know where you've applied, what stage you're at, who you've spoken to. But what I would recommend is that you create an Excel spreadsheet in which you keep track of all your applications. So I did this every year. I wrote down the name of the firm, which industry it was in, whether it was banking or private equity or tech or consulting. I wrote down the stage of application, so if that was just submitted the online application, been invited to video interview, had a first round interview in the office, got to final round. It's really important to track the status of all of your applications. And I also had a field to identify whether I'd spoken to a member of the firm or not, as it really does help you if you can ask someone the question of what makes the firm unique or special or different in their experience, because when it comes to your own interview and application, you can recycle the answer. And on the second point of being early, not all, but some of the banks process their applications on a rolling basis. So the earlier you get in there, the more spots there are to fill. In order to submit your applications early, and I think for summer internships, application season normally starts in early August, you want your CV and cover letter ready by June. And that's what I did, so that I could spend my summer working, doing something, and I didn't have to worry about these documents. So that when it came to applying, it was just a matter of submitting these and not spending too much time on each application. But to do that, you do need to put the work in at some point. And what I did, and what I would recommend, is that you create generic cover letters for each of the industries that you're applying to. So let's say I'm applying to banking and consulting. I have a different cover letter for all the banking applications and a different cover letter for all the consulting applications, and in each one I'm highlighting the most relevant experiences for that field. But what I also do is I leave sections blank, and in those, I know those are the bits that I change for each firm, and they're fairly interchangeable. The things that I leave blank are normally regarding the firm's values and how that aligns to me and my experiences, and also a particular deal that the firm has been involved in or a client that they work with, and whatever interest I have in that or why I've been following it. And this is information that one quick Google or look on their website will tell you. So in my opinion, it's the most time efficient and pain-free way of submitting cover letters. The next thing I want to talk about is rejections. They are inevitable, and you mustn't let disappointment and rejection stop you from trying again. Just for reference, I think every single summer consistently from my first year, I applied to around 40 internships. And of course, on my LinkedIn and in my videos, you see the success stories, but what you don't see is all the rejection emails. In spite of coming from a top university and having a really strong CV, I still would only get 1 or maximum 2 acceptances for every 40 that I put in. For some people that number is better, for some people that number is worse. I hope it does help you by giving you an idea of the sheer volume that I applied to, and it is normal and in fact advisable. Nobody likes to talk about their rejections, but if you have a fear of failure, I honestly think it will stop you from achieving so much in life that you have to learn how to deal with it. It is a part of life, and move forward, not let it get you down. So if you're organized, do it early, have done all the things that I've mentioned, you're still not guaranteed a job at an investment bank. There is always an element of luck and randomness with these things, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Now, if banking is truly your dream job, then my advice to you is to keep on going. Intern in other industries, gain more qualifications, and in that time, keep pursuing your dream because it is worth it. Of course, if it's affecting other facets of your life, you need to be supporting yourself financially and you're not able to do so, that does take precedent. But if you can afford to, and you know this is what you want, it's worth fighting for, and you have to know that nobody is handed the job on a platter. But on the flip side, if you have started early, you have a very good CV, and you've been diligent in your applications, your chances of being accepted are also higher. So if you get a summer internship, that's probably the most foolproof way of getting a full-time offer. And it's not to say that you can't get a full-time offer without a summer internship, but people that do are very much in the minority. In most cases, you will need a summer internship to get a banking job. Converting your internship into a full-time job is another whole video in itself, so if that's something that you want to see me discuss, comment down below and let me know, and I'm happy to share my tips and experiences with that. Normally, I think between 60 and 70% of summer interns do convert their internship into full-time offers, which ultimately lands them with a banking job when they graduate. I hope this video was helpful for those of you trying to break into investment banking. There are so many facets to the application process, and it's really a journey, but there are certainly practical steps you can take to improve your chances. It's a long process, and be prepared for it. Remember, it took me 3 years, one of the hardest degrees at a top university, and over 100 rejections to land the offers that I did. Okay, well that's all for this one. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.